Hello, my friend. Thank you for coming back and sitting with me today. There are certain days in a child's life that we think we would never miss. The first day of school, the first performance, the final game of the season, graduation. Days when a child looks up into the crowd, looks across the rows of chairs, looks toward the door, and hopes to see a familiar face. Not because they need the loudest applause, not because they need the whole world to notice them, but because among all those strangers, there is one person they want to see most. A father, a mother, someone who once drove them to school, someone who once tied their shoes, someone who once said, "I'll be there." Today I want to tell you about a man named Richard. Richard was not a bad father. He did not abandon his family. He did not disappear. He did not treat his daughter cruelly. He was simply a very busy man, a father who believed that if he worked hard enough, provided well enough, and kept the family steady, the people he loved would understand. And for many years his daughter Claire tried to understand. Until one afternoon in May, when she stood in her graduation gown, holding her cap in her hands, and saw an empty seat. Richard Bennett was 50 years old. He lived in the suburbs of Chicago with his wife Linda and their 18-year-old daughter Claire. Richard worked in logistics for a large shipping company. His job was not glamorous. It was not something that made the news. Most people outside the industry did not really understand what he did every day. But if a shipment was delayed, if a contract was in trouble, if a warehouse was short-staffed, or if an important client was angry, Richard's phone would ring. Early mornings, evenings, weekends. During dinner, Richard was good at solving problems. He was calm, practical, responsible. His coworkers trusted him. His boss trusted him. Clients trusted him. And because of that, more and more problems found their way to him. At home, Richard was also the main provider. He did not spend much on himself. The car he drove was old. His winter coat had been with him for more than 10 years. But Claire's school fees were always paid on time. Her laptop was replaced when she needed one. SAT classes, school trips, books, uniforms, activities. Richard always said, "I'll take care of it." And he did. He loved his family in the way he knew how, through bills that were paid, through a car that always had gas, through a roof repaired before winter, through making sure Linda and Claire did not have to worry about money. But there was one thing Richard was not very good at: being present. Not because he did not want to be, but because every time he planned to be present, work needed him. Or at least, he believed it did. Claire, his daughter, grew up smart and gentle. She was not a child who asked for much. From the time she was little, Claire was used to seeing her father on the phone, in the car, at the dinner table, in the backyard. Even when the family watched a movie together, Richard's phone would rest face down on his knee, like a small door that could open at any moment and pull him somewhere else. When Claire was in elementary school, she once drew a picture of her family. In the picture, there was her mother. There was Claire. There was the house. There was their old dog, Max. And there was her father, standing beside a very large phone. Linda saw the picture and laughed a little, then felt a small ache in her chest. She showed it to Richard that night. He laughed softly. "She drew me like that?" Linda said gently. "Maybe because she sees you like that a lot." Richard was quiet for a moment. Then later, when Claire was asleep, he kissed her forehead. The next evening, he tried not to touch his phone during dinner. But 10 minutes in, a call came from work. He looked at the screen, sighed, then said, "I'll just take this quickly." Claire was 8 years old then. She did not understand logistics. She only understood that something inside that phone often mattered more than the story she was telling. Years passed. Claire entered high school. She was not loud. She did not like being the center of attention. She liked reading, drawing, and being part of the school theater club, but not because she wanted the spotlight. She liked working backstage, designing posters, painting sets, arranging props. She liked small things done carefully, even when no one applauded them. In that way, maybe she was a little like her father. Richard was also someone who stood behind the scenes and kept things moving. The difference was that Claire often wished her father would notice the things she made, even when they were not big. In ninth grade, she designed a poster for the school's spring play. Her poster was chosen and displayed in the main hallway. Claire took a picture and sent it to her father. The text said, "Dad, my poster got picked." Richard was in a meeting. He saw the message appear on his screen. He smiled. He meant to answer right away. But the client was speaking, so he set the phone down. That evening, he texted back, "Great job, kiddo. Proud of you." Claire smiled when she saw it, but she had been waiting all day. In 10th grade, Claire had a small theater event. She was not acting in the main role. Her backstage group was being recognized, and she would step on stage with the others to receive thanks. She asked Richard 2 weeks before the event, "Dad, can you come?" Richard checked his calendar. "What day?" "Thursday, 7 o'clock. He frowned. "Thursday I have a call with the California client, but I'll try." Claire nodded. "Okay." That night, Linda sat in the auditorium. Richard did not make it in time. He texted, "Tell Claire I'm sorry. Call ran late." Linda looked at the message, then looked at Claire standing on stage, her eyes searching the audience. When Claire saw her mother, she smiled. A small smile, enough to say she was okay. But Linda saw her look once more, toward the door. Richard did not miss everything. He was there for many things. He came to some academic competitions. He drove Claire to take the SAT on a Saturday morning. He helped her load the car when she left for an art camp. He sat with her for hours, filling out scholarship forms, even if he checked email while doing it. He was the kind of father who, if his daughter's car broke down on the side of the road, would drop everything and come immediately. If she needed money for school, he would find a way. If she were ever in danger, he would stand in front of her without hesitation. But the things that did not seem urgent, those were the things he often believed could wait. A family dinner, a long conversation, a small performance, an afternoon getting coffee, a few minutes sitting with his daughter while she talked about a new drawing. Those things did not sound an alarm. They did not arrive marked urgent. No client was angry if he missed them. No one called him again and again. So they were easier to push back. Over time, Claire learned not to ask too much. Not because she stopped needing her father, but because she did not want to hear one more, "I'll try." At some point in a child's life, the words "I'll try" can begin to sound like "I probably won't be there." And Claire, being a good daughter, learned to nod. She learned to say, "It's okay, Dad," the way many children learn to make things easier for their parents, even when it is not easier for them. Senior year came quickly, faster than Richard expected. One day, Claire was a little girl carrying a purple backpack to 3rd grade. And somehow, the next day, she was standing in the kitchen holding a college acceptance letter. She had been accepted into an art school in Wisconsin. Not too far, but not close either. Linda cried as soon as she read the letter. Richard hugged Claire and said, "I knew you could do it." Claire smiled. "You didn't even know what state the school was in." Richard laughed. "All right. I deserved that." The whole family laughed. It was a warm moment. And deep inside, Richard felt a pride he did not quite know how to express. His daughter was about to leave home, about to follow a path of her own. And he thought, "I did all right. Not perfectly, But I did all right. I took care of her. I helped give her a chance. I stood behind her. And in one sense, all of that was true. But there was something he still had not fully understood. Standing behind someone is not always the same as standing beside them. In April, the school sent information about graduation. Claire placed the envelope on the dinner table. Graduation is May 27th, 4 o'clock. Linda took out her phone and saved the date immediately. Richard was cutting into his dinner. What date? May 27th. What day of the week? Friday. Richard paused. Friday. Claire looked at him. Yeah. Richard opened his calendar. He was quiet for a few seconds. Linda looked at him. What is it? Richard let out a breath. That's the day of the final review with the Denver client. It's a major contract. Claire put her fork down. But graduation starts at 4. I know. The meeting is at 2. If it ends on time, I can still make it. Linda said. Richard. He looked at his wife. I'll try. I mean it. Claire looked down at her plate, then nodded. Okay, it's fine. Richard hated when she said that. It's fine. Too quick. Too neat. As if she had already prepared the sentence before he disappointed her. He wanted to say, I'll be there, not I'll try. But he looked at his calendar, at the client's name, at the numbers attached to the contract. And he said the thing he had said too many times. I'll do everything I can. Claire gave him a small smile. Okay. Graduation day arrived. The morning was clear. The kind of beautiful late May day the suburbs sometimes get. Soft sunlight, a light breeze, maple trees along the streets full of green leaves. In her bedroom, Claire stood in front of the mirror, wearing a white dress under her graduation gown. Linda helped adjust the tassel on her cap. You look beautiful. Claire laughed. I look weird. No. You look like someone who is about to make her mother cry in public. Mom. Linda hugged her daughter. A little longer than usual. Downstairs, Richard was wearing a light blue dress shirt and slacks. He had already laid out a tie. His suit jacket was on the chair. He truly planned to go. The meeting was at 2. If everything went according to plan, he would leave the office by 3:15, drive straight to the school, and arrive before the students walked in. He had checked the route. He had told his assistant not to schedule any calls after 3. He had told his co-workers, I have to leave on time today. My daughter is graduating. And when he said it, he felt glad. As if this time he had put something important in the right place. Before he left the house, Claire walked through the dining room. Richard was holding his briefcase. He looked at his daughter. For a moment, he saw the 8-year-old girl with the family drawing. Then he saw the 18-year-old standing in front of him. He said, I'll see you there. Claire looked at him. Those words sounded different from I'll try. She heard the difference. She smiled. Okay. Richard stepped forward and hugged her. I'm proud of you. I know, she said softly. And this time she really wanted to believe it. The 2 o'clock meeting began on time. Richard sat in a conference room on the 12th floor. A large screen glowed at the front of the room. The Denver client was on the video call. At first, everything went smoothly. The report was presented. The numbers matched. The delivery timeline was clear. Richard checked the time. 2:40. Fine. 2:50. Still fine. Then a problem came up. One of the clients asked about an unexpected fee. Someone from finance gave an unclear answer. The client was not satisfied. Voices became tense. Richard sat up a little straighter. This was the kind of situation where people usually looked to him. And they did. His boss turned to him and said, Richard, can you walk them through this? Richard looked at the clock. 3:05. He could have said, I have to go. He could have stood up. He could have let someone else handle it. But the whole room was looking at him. A major contract. Months of work. A decision that could affect the whole team. So he said, "Sure. Let me explain." 10 minutes, he thought. Just 10 minutes. But 10 minutes became 20. 20 became 30. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from Linda. "Students are lining up. Are you on your way?" Richard glanced at it. His chest tightened. Under the table, he typed quickly, "Almost done." But he was not almost done. 3:45. 3:55. Linda called. He did not answer. Not because he did not want to, but because he was speaking, explaining, saving a contract, doing the thing everyone always needed him to do. At 4:05, the ceremony began. Inside the high school auditorium, music filled the room. Students walked in by rows. Dark blue gowns, square caps, parents clapping. Linda sat in the middle section. Beside her was an empty seat. At first she had placed her purse on it. Then she moved the purse to the floor, as if by keeping the seat open, Richard might still appear. Claire walked in with her class. She looked toward the family section. She saw her mother. Linda waved, smiling. Claire smiled back. Then her eyes stopped at the seat beside her mother. Empty. Claire looked toward the door. Once. Then once more. After that, she faced forward. The smile was still there, but smaller. Richard left the office at 4:20. He nearly ran to the elevator. In the car, he called Linda. She answered. Her voice was low. "Where are you?" "I'm driving. I'll be there in 20 minutes. "Richard." He could hear applause behind her. "Did she get her diploma yet?" "Not yet, but soon." "I'll make it." Linda was quiet. Then she said, "Drive safely." That hurt him more than if she had scolded him. He drove through familiar streets, red lights, traffic, a construction lane. Each minute felt like something slipping out of his hands. When he reached the school, the parking lot was almost full. He ran across the grounds, entered through a side door of the auditorium. Just as loud applause filled the room. He stood at the back, breathing hard. On the stage, a row of students was walking down the steps. He looked around, searching for Claire. Linda saw him from a distance. She did not say anything. She only looked at him. Richard moved toward their row. "Where's Claire?" Linda looked toward the stage. "She just finished." Richard stood still. "What do you mean she just finished?" "She just received her diploma." The applause continued for the next student. Richard looked toward the stage. But the moment had already passed. Not passed in the way a meeting can be summarized in notes. Not in the way an email can be sent again. It had happened. And he had not been there. Richard sat down in the empty seat beside Linda. The seat she had saved for him from the beginning. Now, he was sitting in it. But somehow, it still felt empty. After the ceremony, families gathered outside the school. Flowers, balloons, photographs, laughter. Parents hugging children. Grandparents wiping tears. Friends calling one another's names across the lawn. Richard saw Claire standing near a maple tree, taking pictures with a few friends. She held her diploma in one hand. Her graduation cap was a little crooked. Her face was bright. And for a moment, Richard felt both pride and pain. Linda walked to Claire first. She hugged her tightly. "You did it." Claire laughed. "Did you cry?" "Yes, a lot." Richard stood a few steps behind. Claire saw him. Her smile did not disappear, but something in her eyes became quieter. He stepped forward. "Claire," she said, "I did." Two ordinary words. Not angry, not keeled. Just ordinary. And somehow, the ordinariness made it harder for Richard to breathe. He said, "I'm sorry." The meeting ran long. I tried to... Then he stopped. Because he heard himself. I tried. There it was again. Claire looked down at her diploma, then said softly, "It's okay." Richard almost wished she would get angry. He wished she would say he had hurt her. He wished she would give him something he could respond to. But Claire only stood there, more grown up than he remembered, calmer than he hoped. She said, "Can we take a picture before everyone leaves?" Richard nodded. Of course. They stood together. Linda held up her phone. Richard placed his hand gently behind Claire's back. Claire smiled at the camera. Richard smiled too. The photograph looked beautiful. A proud father. An emotional mother. A daughter who had just graduated. No one looking at that picture would know that. Only minutes earlier, the father had sat down in an empty seat too late. That evening, the family went home. Linda placed the flowers in a vase. Claire took off her graduation gown and draped it over a chair. There were a few small gifts on the table. A card from her grandmother. An envelope from her aunt and uncle. A cake Linda had ordered. Richard tried to make the evening feel lighter. He asked Claire what she wanted for dinner. He said they could go out to a restaurant. He suggested they throw a small party that weekend. Claire said, "That's okay, Dad. I'm tired." Her voice was not harsh, just tired. She cut a piece of cake, ate a few bites, then said, "I'm going upstairs for a while." Linda looked at Richard, not accusing him, but with sadness in her eyes. Richard stayed at the dining table. In front of him was Claire's graduation cap. On the top she had decorated it with little stars and a silver line of words. On to the next chapter. Richard touched the words lightly. The next chapter. He realized his daughter was truly stepping into another chapter of her life. And on the day that marked the closing of the old one, he had allowed work to write his name in the place where he should have been. Later that night, after Linda had gone upstairs, Richard walked past Claire's bedroom door. It was partly open. Her desk lamp was still on. He lifted his hand to knock, then stopped. He heard Claire crying softly, not loudly, not wanting anyone to hear, just the kind of quiet crying someone tries to swallow because they do not want to make things heavier. Richard stood outside the door, his hand raised, then lowered. He did not know what to say. For the first time, a man who was very good at solving problems understood that some things cannot be repaired by explaining them. The next morning was Saturday. Richard woke up early. He went into the kitchen, made coffee, sat alone at the dining table. A few scraps of wrapping paper from the night before were still on the table. He opened his phone. There was an email from work. The Denver client was satisfied. His boss had sent a message. "Great job yesterday. You saved the account." Richard looked at the words. Before, they would have made him feel relieved, proud, as if all the effort had been worth it. But that morning, he simply placed the phone face down on the table. He had saved an account and missed the moment his daughter received her diploma. Both things were true, but one would be replaced by another contract, another meeting, another client. The other would not. After a while, Claire came into the kitchen. Her hair was tied back loosely. She was wearing an oversized hoodie. She looked surprised to see her father sitting there. "You're up early," Richard said. "I wanted to talk to you, if you can." Claire opened the cabinet and took out a glass. "Okay." She sat across from him. Richard looked at his daughter. He had prepared many sentences in his head. About the meeting, about the contract, about responsibility, about how he really had tried. But looking at Claire, he understood that if he began with reasons, he would be putting work between them again. So he said, "I'm sorry I was not there when you received your diploma." Claire looked down at her glass of water. Richard continued, I'm not just sorry that you were upset. He paused. I'm sorry because I missed something important to you. Claire was quiet. He said, I told you I would be there, and I was not. That sentence stayed in the kitchen for a long time. Claire ran her finger lightly along the edge of the glass, then said, I know your work is important. Richard shook his head. I know, but you are important too. Claire looked up. Her eyes were red. I didn't want to make you feel bad. Richard felt something inside him ache. You don't have to protect me from the fact that I hurt you. Claire turned toward the window. Morning light was falling on the maple tree in the yard. She said very softly, I looked for you. Richard closed his eyes. The sentence was not loud, but it went straight through him. Claire continued, I knew Mom was there, and I was really glad she was there. But I kept thinking, maybe Dad will run in before they call my name. She gave a small, sad laugh, but tears fell. I kept looking at the door. Richard said nothing. There was no sentence quick enough for that. Claire wiped her cheek. Then when I heard my name, I looked one more time, and the seat was still empty. Richard lowered his head. He had never hated a chair so much in his life. After a while he said, I can't get that moment back. Claire looked at him. Richard continued, I wish I could, but I can't. He took a breath. What I can do is not pretend it didn't matter, and not make you say it was okay. Claire was quiet. Then she nodded very slightly. Thank you. It was not full forgiveness. It was not everything repaired in one morning. It was only a small door opening. But sometimes a small door is where healing begins. In the weeks that followed, Richard began to do a few things differently. Not like a man who suddenly became a perfect father. He still went to work, still had responsibilities, still had tired days. But he began learning the difference between what was truly urgent and what was only loud. He started putting his phone in another room during dinner. At first it was hard. Every time the phone buzzed, he almost wanted to stand up. But then he would look at Claire, look at Linda, and stay. One evening, Claire was talking about her upcoming college orientation. In the past, Richard might have listened while checking email. This time he asked, What are you most nervous about? Claire looked surprised. Then she answered honestly, I'm scared I won't be as good as everyone else. Richard wanted to say quickly, You'll be fine. But he stopped himself. He was beginning to understand that being present does not mean fixing someone's feelings as fast as possible. Sometimes being present means staying with them inside those feelings. So he said, Tell me more. Claire looked at him. Then she did. Not for a long time, but longer than before. Another weekend, Richard took half a day off so he could go with Claire to buy things for her dorm room. Linda had planned to come too, but Claire said, I can go with Dad. Richard understood that this was a small gift. He did not make a big deal out of it. He just drove. They walked through aisles of towels, desk lamps, storage bins, and bedding. Claire chose a light blue blanket. Richard picked it up. This one? Yeah. Looks warm. Are you reviewing blankets now? Richard laughed. I'm trying. Claire laughed too. A more real laugh. Afterward, they stopped at a small coffee shop. They sat outside. Richard did not take out his phone. Claire noticed. She did not say anything, but she noticed. And sometimes children remember small things like that. Not only the times their parents were absent, but also the times they chose to stay. August came. The day arrived to take Claire to college. The car was full. Suitcases, cardboard boxes, pillows, a desk lamp, the light blue blanket. Richard drove. Linda sat in the passenger seat. Claire sat in the back with one earbud in, looking out the window. The drive to Wisconsin took a little more than 2.5 hours. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they were quiet. Richard did not try to fill every empty space. He was learning that silence does not always need to be fixed. When they reached the dorm, they carried everything up to Claire's room. Richard put together the desk lamp. Linda helped make the bed. Claire arranged books on the shelf. The room was small but bright. A window looked out toward a row of trees. When everything was done, the three of them stood in the middle of the room. No one wanted to be the first to say it was time to go. Finally, Linda hugged Claire first. Mother and daughter cried. Richard stood there with his hand in his pockets, trying to swallow the feeling in his throat. Then Claire turned to him. "Bye, Dad." Richard stepped forward and hugged her. This time he did not make the hug quick. He held her like someone who understood that some moments must be lived fully while they are happening. He said softly, "I'm proud of you." Claire said, "I know." Then, after a second, she added, "I'm glad you're here." Richard closed his eyes. "Me too." When he let go, he took a small envelope from his jacket pocket. "This is for you. You don't have to read it now." Claire took it. "What is it?" "Just a letter." Claire looked at him. Richard gave a small, embarrassed smile. "I'm not very good at this stuff." Claire smiled. "I know." He laughed. "Thank you." On the drive home, Linda fell asleep in the passenger seat. Richard drove in silence. The empty seat at graduation station was still there inside him. Maybe it always would be. But beside it now, there was another memory. The dorm room, the desk lamp, the long hug, the words, "I'm glad you're here." He could not take back what he had missed, but he could choose not to let what remained pass by while he was looking somewhere else. That night in her new dorm room, Claire opened the letter from her father. Richard's handwriting was not beautiful. There were a few crossed-out words. The letter was not long. "Claire, I have thought a lot about your graduation day. I know I cannot go bow and sit in that seat at the right time. I also know that saying I am sorry does not make it as if it never happened. But I want you to know that I saw it. Not just that I saw you receive your diploma in the pictures. I saw what I missed. I saw that you looked for me. I saw that you had to say, 'It's okay,' when it was not completely okay. I am sorry I put you in that position. I am learning. Maybe later than I should have. But I am learning that love is not only providing, protecting, and working hard. Love is also being there. I do not want to miss the next chapter of your life because I am too busy fixing loud things somewhere else. I cannot promise I will be perfect, but I can promise I am trying to be present in a more honest way. I love you. Dad." Claire read the letter twice, then folded it carefully. She placed it inside the drawer of her desk. She looked around her new room. The life ahead of her still felt unfamiliar. She was still a little hurt, still a little sad. But there was something else there too, a small lightness. Because her father had not asked her to forget. He had not said he tried his best, so she should understand. He had only said, "I saw it." And sometimes that is where healing begins. Not when everything is fixed, but when the hurt is finally seen honestly. You know, there are many fathers and mothers like Richard, not lacking love, not lacking responsibility. They work hard. They pay the bills. They keep the family safe. They sacrifice things their children may never fully see. And all of that is love. But sometimes, while trying to build a good life for the people we love, we can miss the very moments that make up that life. A ceremony, a dinner, a story a child wants to tell, a moment when someone looks toward the door and hopes we will walk in. What makes Richard's story hurt is not that he did not love Claire. He loved her very much. What hurts is that he thought presents could be postponed, that if he missed today, there would be another time. But some moments in a child's life do not come around the same way again. We can apologize. We can begin again. We can make new memories. But we cannot go back to the exact empty seat. At the exact moment, their name was called. And maybe the reminder here is not to live in fear. It is not to feel guilty forever for everything we have missed. It is simply to notice while we still can. Some emails can wait. Some calls can be returned later. Some problems are loud, but not as important as a child looking for us in a crowd. And if we have missed something before, maybe the most honest thing is not to explain too much. Maybe it is simply to say, "I'm sorry that mattered, and I see what I missed." Sometimes that kind of honesty opens a small door for love to return. If today's story made you think of a day you once missed, or someone who once looked for you and did not see you there, I hope you hold that feeling gently. Not to blame yourself forever, not to live in regret, but as a quiet reminder that there are still moments today waiting for our presence. Maybe it is a small performance, a weekend game, a dinner without the phone, a conversation before a child leaves home, a hug that lasts a little longer than usual. Thank you for sitting with me today. I truly appreciate it. Until our next story, take good care of yourself. And if there is someone in your life who is about to have an important day, a day when they may look into the crowd hoping to find you, if you still can't, be there. This is Companion. Stories that remind us what truly matters.